Good morning. This is the backup video for Monday, September 14th, 2020, which is for European history. Okay. Good morning. Good morning. What we've each gotten is a example of the sorts of things that will earn an A plus on the chapter survey. Now, okay, that's not even on there, but it will be. Neek. So, each of those, in different ways, earned an A plus. For those of you at home, you'll get one of these tomorrow. It looks like this. And what it is a series of photocopies with the names stricken of 5 A plus papers from all 3 of my European history sections. Let's see, I'm going to call name and you're going to say here, okay, Woodworth, not here because that's a different class. We have B and A mixed up, so it's going to be some of you and some of other people. Hepworth, not here. Lee, you're here. So look those over while I'm handing out work and see, Garcoles, see what it is that Kenner. Okay. What it is that they might have had. Baloo?
Yes. Thank you.
Sorry. Simpkins. Fulton. What they might have had that you didn't, or if one of yours is on there, you can be happy about having done it. Birmingham is not here. K. Kenner. Cudmore. That's you. Garcoles. That's you. Warren. That's you. Baloo. That's you. Rigg. That's you. Woodworth. Not here. Garrett Heaton. Not here. Knife. Not here. Hepworth. Not here. Spodnik. Not here. Rigg. Cudmore. Here, try to stay calm. K. Kenner. Warren. Nice and quick. Garcoles. 2. Blue. 2. Spodnik's not here. Knife is not here. Birmingham is not here. Simpkins is not here. Keaton is not here. Okay, so the thrilling television, for those of you who are watching at home or on YouTube, is that I've just handed out people's work, and I've also handed out what are called exemplars. An exemplar is a fancy schmancy word for an example, and the example is of what constitutes representative samples of A plus quality work. So what I have done is I have handed out A plus quality work to each of you who are here, and I will tomorrow to those of you who are not, so that you can see what it is you would aspire to do. Now, obviously, this is the old format, but you're smart people. You can adapt what I had shown you there as good examples from the old format to the new. Any questions thus far? I've also handed back your quizzes for Baker Chapter Survey 12, and you can rewrite wrong answers for half credit and get those into me anytime during the quarter. Although if I were you, I'd do it sooner than later. Rewrite wrong answers for half credit as complete corrected statements on a separate sheet of paper and staple it. As to map items, what you would do is use a statement of relative geography. In other words, Portugal is west of Spain. The Papal States are in central Italy. That will do for map items. If you're talking about what came first, you would say that the painting of the Mona Lisa came before the sack of Rome. Okay? Any questions on how to do corrections? Seeing none, moving on. Okay. So, on Friday, you saw the lecture, and hopefully you have written your 3 paragraphs on that. I have not yet begun to check it, but they should have been in before class time begins. And I'll be grading those at some point over the next few days. So please try to get those things in for class on Monday. That means seeing the videos, seeing any associated videos that I or materials that I present to you in that Friday assignment, and getting it in for Monday. Also, those of you at home should certainly check in. So I think that's all the background business that we had. Am I mistaken? Somebody want to remind me how far we got on Friday? This is a memory test, history students. How far?
I think we stopped at Athens, Persia.
Okay, so we stopped at Pheidippides and the Battle of Marathon. Who's Pheidippides?
It's like it's really how Athens paid from surrender and dies.
Yeah, he's the first marathon runner. Runs the 26 miles to inform Athens not to surrender, that the Persians are bluffing, that Persia was defeated, and he dies of a cardiac arrest right there in front of the walls of Athens. He is one example of how a single human being can change the course of all of history. And it is a for want of a nail argument. There's the old axiom. For want of a nail, the horseshoe was lost. For want of a horseshoe, the horse went lame. For want of a horse, the message was lost. For want of a message, the battle was lost. For want of that battle, the war was lost. For want of victory in that war, the civilization fell and the earth was darkened. So, another way of looking at this is something that's more fashionable these days, which is the Flutterby effect. The Flutterby, or butterfly effect, is if a butterfly in the short summer of Siberia flutters its wings thusly rather than thusly, it will change ultimately in a few years the course of all weather on Earth. It's a holistic way of looking at life, the universe, and everything. And what it says is that absolutely everything matters. You take one thing, change it, even if it's the most minor thing, it will have effects. And those effects can transform the world. This is important to remember because the world is filled with institutions, media, and individuals who will try to imply to you, they'll rarely say it, but they will try to demonstrate to you that you can't fight City Hall, that you don't matter, that unless you are one of the cognoscenti, the smart ones, or the nomenclatura, the connected ones, unless you are involved in the political mafia, or are a swamp creature in some way, shape, or form, unless you are born to a noble family, and even then you'd better be a remarkable individual, you'd better shut the heck up and do what you're told. Conform or be punished. Go along or get stepped on. That lesson is not for nothing, because to be an individual is to be indecent in the eyes of conformists. To be an individual and succeed is to be offensive. What people don't mind is somebody saying, I'm me, I just gotta be me. They got to be a hero and they died. Because the lesson is you can't fight City Hall. You, a nobody, can't change history. History is filled with examples that disproves this idea. But it's in nobody's power interests to share the reality with you. That in fact, if you don't fight City Hall, if you don't advocate your own concepts of truth, who the hell will? You can and do change history on a certain scale every day of your life. By existing, you've changed the lives of your parents and your family, your classmates, your friends, your teammates, your workmates. If you haven't already, you'll find friends who fall along the wayside. They become addicts. They become depressive. They kill themselves, either through reckless behavior that is wanton, daring the world to end them, or they actually commit suicide. And you'll know how it feels when a close person to you does this, saying no to life, no to the future, either through addiction or through death. It's not your fault, not unless you set them up to do it. But you still have a degree of survivor's guilt. If you don't stand up for what you care about, for what you believe is true, if you go along so that you'll get along with the powers that be, you will experience regret, shame, and a sense of guilt, because silence is assent. If you are silent in the face of a strong idea, and that idea you deem to be evil, and that evil prevails, with the complicity of your silence, you are partially responsible. There are few things in this world that you are morally accountable for. The words that come out of your mouth and the choices that you make are about the only things that you are truly accountable for. You're not accountable to succeed, because that's in God's hands, or that's in the hands of the random factors. All you can do is try your best. And sometimes you can try your damnedest and do nothing wrong and still fail. And sometimes you can be ridiculously incompetent and still be graced with success. Success and failure are beyond your ability to control. What you can control and what you are responsible for, morally, ethically, are your choices. And if you choose to basically become a chameleon, a willow branch in the face of what you deem to be evil, that comes with a price. Remember this. As people try grinding you down, as institutions try demonstrating to you how little power you have, how unimportant you have. Now, the other extreme is narcissism, believing that you are the only bright, shining center of the universe. That is also false. And that way lies madness and pain. You are not the most important person in the world. You are not the only important person in the world. But you are unique. There's only one you right now. I tried demonstrating that on day one. So, Pheidippides, Winston Churchill, many others. But even you, by living your lives the way you are, affect the people around you, who affect the people around them, and so on, and so forth. You have no idea where those ripples end. None. Something that you do or say could affect someone, they don't even know it, but they keep it in the back of their mind. Until 50 years from now, something happens that's similar, and they remember what you said or what you did, and that could help save or damn people in the distant future and far, far away. We never know the effects of our actions. Not really. Not beyond a certain point. We just know that they have effects. Does anyone wish to offer thoughts on this before we move on? Because this is a very anti-Marxian way of looking at history. Karl Marx looks at history as economic and social forces that are impersonal, and people just become the poster child for this or that or the other movement. If it wasn't Lenin, some other Lenin would come along. If it wasn't Stalin or Mao, some other people would come along. To them, people don't matter. Individuals don't matter. It's simply impersonal forces. To which I say, baloney, blue sky, Barbra Streisand, and other words that begin with B and S. Do you have any thoughts on this? Are individuals important in history? Sam?
I mean, to
You
put
can
it
pull your mask down if you want to. You speak.
makes it easier. To put it simply, I do believe that individuals are important in history. In fact, I believe that's the subject of one of my paragraphs.
Good.
Is that the individuals are, and that certain individuals do make quite a difference.
Good. And you never know who those individuals are until after the fact. There are people who think that they are people of destiny and they're deluding themselves. And there are other people who think they're leading quiet and conspicuous lives, and they sometimes leave the greatest impact. We don't know until afterwards. So there's an old, I think it's Shakespeare, but I could be wrong. Let no man say that he's happy until he dies, because you never know. Yes, and then yes. Real communities are composed of independent individuals. False communities are composed of drones that are forced into a single mold. I agree. And as a conservative, I have nothing against community, as long as it's that healthy kind, the kind that brings out the best. One of the glories of ancient Greece is that they bring out the best in individuals. Their societies, their cities, their poli are designed for that. Yes?
I was going to say that I think now individuality is a lot more encouraged in society, especially in our society. And so people are able to have their own opinions and they're able to create new ideas that they think will better the community that we've already created. But I also think that individuals, along with them, like their ideas are what's really important and what they forward and that knowledge that they forward to others, I think is really something that we have to look at.
Well, the individual is an agent who makes certain changes. And if the individual is a person who leaves a legacy idea behind that changes the world, then that individual has, in effect, changed the world. But I would argue you're right, but you don't go far enough. For this reason, we have a bunch of hypocrites today and in the past. People who speak one way and do another thing. And they are not necessarily the best agents of good. They are often agents of evil, or at least agents of selfishness and greed. A person's life is also an expression. Just like terror is a form of communication, so is a form of life. One of the things as a Christian that I take very seriously is the notion that the worst thing in the world for Christianity are Christians who profess with their lips and deny with their life. In other words, people who talk about Christian love but are the most nasty, backbiting scum in every aspect of their life except Sunday morning. You can even see this in church parking lots, and I suspect in synagogue, temple, and mosque parking lots, where people hear about peace and love, and then they try to cut each other off to get out of the parking lot first. Our actions, as well as our words, our lives, as well as our thought, are things that we communicate to the world. Do you agree, disagree?
I do agree with that. I think that, like you were saying, individuals also, I think you're right, there's a lot of hypocrisy and there can be a lot of people who will preach one thing and then they turn around and don't show that with their lives, or they don't show that with what they're telling other people. So it's definitely up in the air on how individuals can affect, because it can go really either way strongly.
But that individual's effect is not an argument, at least by individuals. Any other thoughts? Thank you. Sir, Mr. Ray.
Yeah, so I think that I forget if it was Jesse or Leah that said it, but how individualism is so encouraged in our society. I think that a lot of people in our society have kind of forgotten that it's okay to not be some like an outstanding, um, just like it's okay to be normal, like to fit into, like you get them quoting the straight white male stereotype a
Oh,
lot.
for crying out loud!
So,
Yeah, but they're not racist or sexist,
yeah,
even though they damn straight or homo or heterophobic. No, they're wonderful people of tolerance. Go Antifa, bunch of fascists. But they're not hypocrites. No, you're right. And look, uh, heard this in a Star Trek movie, but it's still true. A person shouldn't try to be a boy or a young man shouldn't try to be a great man. Just try to be a man. Being a normal, decent person is not easy. Being a normal, decent person is actually pretty hard because there are seductions, especially in our society. We're so wealthy all over the place to lead you off the straight and narrow. To be a person who is of their word, you give your word, you keep it. And if things fail, you go up to the person, you look him in the eye and say, I screwed up. I'm sorry, I'll try to make it right. And you have an idea about how that can happen. To be just normal and decent is a challenge. And there's glory in that. Yeah, but our society has this notion of celebrity, and we're sick with it. You know, if you're not on TV, if you don't have a Twitter following, this is the poison of social media. I am horrified that people your age have killed themselves over social media. In one case, because some horrible young lady, no lady at all, young female decided that she was going to play the power game of, oh, he's a guy, he'll do whatever I say because I'm a girl, and she got him to kill himself. She dared him to kill himself, and he did, the dumb idiot. If anyone ever says, do something or I'll kill myself, you say, go right ahead, because they're blackmailing you. That's an evil thing. If you don't do this, I'll hurt myself. If you don't do this, I'll kill myself. That's a shame. Bye. You protect yourself from people like that. Those people will suck the life out of you like any vampire, and they will hurt you. In any case. Yeah. Does that answer your point? Yeah. Okay, quickly.
I to forget to be like just normal human. Because like we feel a lot of pressure from our parents to live up to their expectations, and especially like from our family, our teachers. And so sometimes you just forget that like messing up is okay.
Not only is messing up okay, the best lesson, some of the best lessons I've ever learned in my life have come from failure. What's a shame is when you don't even try because you're afraid. And that's what this idea of super excellence, everyone's a genius, leads to. It leads to paralysis and fear. Being brave enough to just try your best and let the chips fall where they may. And if you succeed, fine. And if you fail, you learn from it. Crying out loud. If you're a kid, you're supposed to go out and get hurt. You're supposed to skin your knees and fight and throw rocks and sticks and get sick and roll around in the muck because that's how you build up immunities. And as a kid, you're supposed to be disciplined and you're supposed to fail and you're supposed to have hardships so that you learn psychological toughness. We've got generations older than you, the millennials, that are completely unprepared because they've been educated by generations of teachers who think it's their job to protect them from pain, and helicopter parents who do the same damn thing. It is bad for these kids. They're adults now, and they've never learned how to dust themselves off and try again. They are not psychologically tough, and it's scary. It really is. And believe me, I was damned when I was teaching 20 years ago for being a nasty, horrible person. Because I said to my kids, I said to their families, and I said to my colleagues, some of my students will fail. In fact, I had a 33% fail rate in the first quarter of the year. Why? Because I was teaching them how to succeed. By the end of the year, I had a 98% success rate. But they had to go through that failure and realize that they had to adapt or perish. And it is that lesson of pain and failure that well-meaning but foolish generations have visited upon our young. You're right. Okay, I gotta go fast, but I saw a hand here and I take it. Did I see your hand again, Sam?
I had my hand.
Well, we'll see. Yeah.
So like kind of about you're like supposed to make mistakes and just in life in general, it
Yeah.
doesn't really feel like you have to be straight A's all
Ah, to heck with them. No, nobody's perfect. And in fact, those people who insist on perfection are usually hiding all sorts of skeletons and all sorts of secrets. Show me a perfectly smooth operation, Frank Herbert, the author of Dune, once wrote. Show me a perfectly smooth operation, and I'll show you somebody covering up. Real boats rock. Real boats rock. Real lives have their share of successes and their share of failures. And anyone who tries selling you on the idea that you've got to be some paragon they are wrong. And whether they are wrong out of malice, or whether they are wrong out of foolishness, or whether they are wrong out of an excess of pride, they're wrong. You've got to be willing to fail, or you'll never succeed. Courage is really important. If you're not courageous, you're not free. Freedom is only for the brave, because only a brave person will step out and do what they think they're themselves. A person who's too afraid to do that will always be a slave to convention. So yes, indeed, yes. Okay, gotta move on quickly. Yes,
Just
sure.
real quick, because this is something you briefly talked about. I find the threat to someone that you are going to hurt yourself or do something to yourself if they don't do something is the weirdest kind of blackmail in existence.
It is, but it assumes that you're a good person, and it assumes that you're a sucker. I was never a babysitter, but I had friends who were, and one of my high school friends who babysat, she was very good at it, had this little kid, 2, 3 years old, I don't know, but the kid used to threaten to hold their breath if he didn't get his way. So she said, fine, do it. His parents always gave in. So he held his breath, and then he passed out. And then he started breathing again. And she laughed when he woke up, and he never pulled it again with her. He still pulled it with her parents. No. I know of people who have been badly hurt and abused by folk who threatened to hurt themselves unless they got their way. It is a strange, but psychologically, in certain situations, that's a very powerful thing. Okay. Greece wins the Greco-Persian Wars, not just because of the Battle of Marathon, the Battle of Salamis, the Battle of Thermopylae before Salamis made Salamis possible, and the Battle of Plataea. Anyone who tells you that, like the AP people, that military history doesn't matter is simply missing the mark. All history matters. It's like all lives matter. Yes, all lives matter and all history matters. And if you are a good historian, you'll study social history. You'll study the history of underprivileged groups. You'll study the history of the aristocracy. You'll study the history of music. And you'll study the history of warfare and battles. Because that often is what changes the course of history most dramatically. Greece thrives. And in Athens, you have the age, the Golden Age, which is also known as the Age of Pericles, which is kind of ironic. Because Athens is supposed to be a democracy. Pericles himself says, "We are the school of all Greece." Now, we don't call a man who's quiet and unassuming, quiet. We call him useless. Athens is supposed to be the ultimate democracy. They choose their council of 500 by lottery, for God's sake. The only elected office they have are their generals, because war is an unforgiving endeavor. And Pericles was basically elected for life as a general. So you have the ultimate democracy's golden age named after a single politician who dominated everything. Go figure. There's irony for you. But Pericles does get the Athenian navy built. He tricks the sucker Greeks on the islands into joining the Delian League that he quickly turns into the Athenian Empire. Got ya! Beware of Athenians bearing treaties. And he builds the high city, the Acropolis, or the Acropolis, and he builds this the temple that's still standing today to Athena, the beautiful Parthenon. I don't know, but I've been told the Parthenon is really old. So, what happens? One of the most needless wars in history happens. Athens and Sparta, the victors of the Persian Wars, 70, 80 years later, decide that they need to go to war. They have about as much to fight over as a lion versus a tiger shark. Athens is a mercantile sea power with delusions of philosophical grandeur and democracy. Sparta is a landlocked agrarian society in the only big valley in all of Greece, whose sole obsession is control of their slaves. Because if they don't control their slaves will kill them. The average Spartan woman has to be able to kill any of her male slaves anytime. And the men, they're in the army all the time. Why? Because they have between 7 helots to every Spartan man, woman, and child, or 20 helots, depending upon the era. But the Peloponnesian War between Athens and Sparta, that's going to end this golden age, happens for the same reason that is among the reasons for every war that has ever happened, ever, ever, ever with human beings. It's the question of who will rule the future. The Peloponnesian War was not about the island of Corcyra. It was about the future. Basically, what Athenians said is, right now, yeah, we can hold our own against the Spartans. But 50 years from now, if trends go certain ways, our grandchildren will be slaves to them, their grandchildren. And the Spartans say the same things. Right now, we're strong enough to keep those damn Athenians off. But if trends go certain ways, our grandchildren will be slaves to those Athenians. So let's fight now while we have an equal chance. And war comes. And for 27 years, war ravages Greece. A plague hits Athens. The Athenians try a gambit at Syracuse in Sicily that fails. Ultimately, Athens loses. Sparta is the master of Greece. But Sparta doesn't want to be the master of Greece. Sparta has all it can do to control its helots. So Sparta is a distracted master and eventually focuses back on its isolationism. So then Thebes, it's not the Egyptian city, the Greek city, and other cities start popping up. We want to be hegemon. No, we want to be hegemon. No, we want to be hegemon. And soon, the Greeks are so damn miserable to one another that they'd rather have some goat-stupper from Macedon named Philip come in and conquer them all, because at least it's not some from Corinth. The Greeks are so poisoned against one another that they welcome. This, by the way, is how the British ruled India. It's the same thing. This is why India, a nation of how many hundred billions? Approaching 1 billion people, still uses English as their national language. Because English isn't Hindi. And therefore, English is something every Indian has to learn. It's neutral. Well, the Greeks ended up being happier under the Macedonians than under their own rulers because they got so poisoned against one another. This is a lesson, by the way, to us today with our poisonous politics. If we're not careful, we'll prefer a hegemon from China or Russia or Germany or whatever, because at least it's not some jerk from California. Or at least it's not some jerk from Idaho. We really risk that with the poison hatred that we're seeing more and more in our society. So the Peloponnesian Wars lead to the Macedonian conquest. Then Philip is assassinated. And everyone thinks his teenage son's going to be a pushover. Did not know who they were messing with. Alexander, son of Philip, hunts down and kills the assassins, and then takes up Philip's project. Greece and Macedon will be united by conquering Persia, which is basically saying, we're going to conquer the known world. And he does it. He does it in a dozen years. Again, battle. Battle of Issus, battle of Gaugamela. He defeats the last Darius of Persia. Alexander achieved something unique in human history. He is lord of East and West. He's the leader of the most dominant Western power, Macedon, and the dominant Eastern power, Persia. At that time, Persia was more powerful than China or India. So, Alexander has this, but then at age 33, he dies. His kingdom is split up into the Diadochi lands, but his idea remains to this day. Alexander's great idea isn't naming cities after his horse Bucephalus, although that's a cool idea, Bucephalus. It's not making your elite soldiers homosexual lovers, because his companion cavalry were paired up as lovers, because the thought that Alexander has was they'll fight harder for the guy they love than just some guy that happens to be with them. That doesn't last, except in certain armies. What lasts... You're so evil. What lasts, I'm not saying it's bad, I'm just pointing out it. What lasts is Hellenism. Hellenism is the Reese's peanut butter cup of culture. It's got a little bit of peanut butter, it's got a little bit of chocolate, all blended together into something wonderful. Hellenism is Eastern culture, Persian culture, and Western culture, Greek culture, blended together. Christianity is Hellenistic. It's got Jewish ideas, that's Eastern, and Greek ideas, that's Western. all coming together into a nice Christian church. That's where we are. I'm going to stop the video to give quiz 13. You at home, do something useful.